Hello and welcome to the 2018 ServiceNow CreatorCon Hackathon Winners Recap. Oh, there's a title. My name is Chuck Tomasi and I am Senior TPMM at ServiceNow for the Now platform. And we are doing this video as a way to spotlight our 2018 Hackathon winners from CreatorCon that was held at Knowledge 18, our big conference we had in Las Vegas this past May. The Hackathon is a contest of individuals and teams where they have 8 hours to create a ServiceNow application from scratch. It's designed to showcase the platform and its capabilities, and the contestants can integrate with other systems, but the core application must be built on ServiceNow. And the stuff the teams built this year are nothing short of amazing. To start things off, I have Frank Schuster from Team Epoxio. Welcome, Frank.
Hey, Chuck. How are you?
I'm doing great. Boy, I don't know if the viewers know this, but you and I used to be on the same team not too many months ago.
That's true.
I think a year
quite a
ago.
while.
Yeah, about a year ago, we were working on similar projects on the same team at ServiceNow. So welcome back to a ServiceNow video. And I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us what you built at the hackathon and the pieces you used and the challenges you had and all that good stuff. So it's on you, buddy.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thank you, Chuck. So let me do a quick screen share here. So our application that we built is called Now, and our team consists of Cheyenne McGregor, who works for NL+ up here in Calgary, Canada. She's a technical analyst and sysadmin/developer. Stefan Balthoff from ING, that's the German branch of the Dutch ING Bank. He's a business process engineer, as well as Mike Rodway and myself from Epoxio up here in Calgary. We're both tech, working with the ServiceNow platform, building custom applications, service portals, and integrations. So initially, Mike and I were the only ones who were to participate in the hackathon. And then Mike's wife actually came up with the idea for the application that we're going to be introducing in a few minutes here. The funny thing is, then when we ran into Cheyenne at the Knowledge, she actually heard about, or we told her about what we were planning to build. And she loved the idea because her sister actually works with autistic kids. So it was an absolute no-brainer to get her on the team. And funny enough, when we were in the hackathon waiting zone, basically right before the hackathon started, we ran into Stefan, and I recognized him from, well, now almost 6 years ago. And he spontaneously joined the team. So that's how we all got together, and we were literally like cranking out architecture on paper half an hour before the hackathon started. So it was a true hackathon for us. We didn't prep anything, nothing. It was a true hackathon idea, just really an idea that we came up with same day, architected it the same day, prototyped it the same day. So this was a lot of fun for us.
That's awesome.
All right.
Show us what you built. I'm eager to see this.
Sounds good. So our mission statement, super simple. We want to create a safer environment for autistic children at school. So Mike's wife works with autistic kids, and the problem that she has, I'm going to go to a problem statement here pretty quick, is that autistic children often tend to leave the school premises, right, during school hours, and then the location of the child is literally unknown, right? So they just wander off because they think they want to get some sweets or something else they are after, and it's really irrational, right? So then the parents and the teachers, so first of all the staff, and then also the parents involved, are often subject to a manual execution and resolution plan, right? So it involves calls, it involves emails and Excel and other paperwork. So they basically have to fill out an incident report after the fact, right? So
isn't that funny? I mean, you're in the same situation I am every day, where you see an opportunity. And this is an interesting one. I love this one because those of us who don't have autistic children would never have dreamed of this as an application.
No, 100%.
When you're in that situation, you go, look how inefficient this process is. I can help.
Yeah, it was, as you said, it was pretty interesting. It's like the moment you looked at it and we heard it, we were like, yeah, that's it. That's got to be it, right? It was a perfect fit for the platform. It was all transactional. Somebody needs something. We need to find the kid. We have to basically notify somebody who's the teacher, right, once the kid leaves the premises. And then everything after the fact, notifications, reports, KPIs, and then also predictive behavior, right? So say if the same child wanders off every month, then we can look back at the results and say, well, in the last 4 months, when the kid wandered off, 3 of the 4 times they went to Tim Hortons. I mean, we're in Canada, so it's got to be Tim Hortons, right?
I laugh because it's a funny use case, but it makes total sense, and I love the predictive nature of this.
Yeah, I mean, you can add everything around it with the platform you would never have with paperwork, spreadsheets, etc. That we can really, really provide more insight into the process. It's not all about, of course, mainly it's about the child's safety, right? But everything that it provides in the back end for the teacher and the school district and all of this kind of stuff is pretty amazing. All the KPIs you can pull out of this are quite worth a lot, right?
Do you have a demo?
Yeah, I certainly do. So this is the teacher portal. We're going to talk about that in a second. What we want to do first is I want to simulate how the child basically gets the location in the system, right? So for our demo, we basically we had an Apple Watch that we were using for check-in purposes, right? So into Servicenow. So the watch was connected to the Servicenow instance, and we had a manual check-in. Our real idea is to have a native app in the background that would basically check the kid in every minute, right? So every minute it would ping with the geo coordinates, and it would basically have a geofence, which is the latitude and longitude of the school that the kid is basically assigned to in the Servicenow system. And we use the Google Maps, the Google Maps distance API to determine how far is the distance from the current location of the kid to the actual school, right? And once it's more than a certain distance, we're actually notifying the teacher. That's when the incident is being automatically kicked off, right? So for demo purposes, we use the Apple, the native app and the phone. But in reality, right, we would need to find something that is obviously a lot less expensive, because we're not suggesting every kid should have an Apple Watch or something like that, right? So I have done for the demo's sake, I actually will check us into the Tim Hortons. So instead of using my coordinates from my home, I actually provided a static latitude and longitude value so we can simulate that a little better. And the school is right here. So it's an actual school that's in my district right here on the corner from Royal Birkdale and Royal Oakway Northwest. It's the William Pratt School. So that's basically the school that's assigned to the teacher. So without further ado, I'm just going to check us in.
Frank has wandered off again.
That's exactly what's happening.
I suspect you could also use this for your house arrest. I
probably shouldn't say that out loud, but we talked to somebody and that person said, "Oh, we need this for our service desk agents so they don't wander off the desk." And I was like, well, maybe that's not the appropriate use case. But funny enough, so Alan Linewand, so Servicenow Judge, was actually asking us whatever applications or other uses we see for this. And while we built this, right, it was so apparent to us that this could be used for older people with dementia or Alzheimer or something like this. There's like a variety of other use cases that we could actually apply to this, right?
And the name Safe Now still applies no matter who's wandering off.
Exactly. So that was really our initial use case. But then we basically decided, okay, this can be applied to a lot more than that. All right, so we checked in the kid or the student. What we're going to do now is we're going to log into the teacher portal. So as Kendra Martin. And as you may notice, this portal looks very different than the out-of-the-box Servicenow portal.
Sure.
Reason being is we're using the Google Material Kit, so it's a complete new portal, complete new theme. Literally has nothing to do with the actual styling of the out-of-the-box Servicenow portal. All custom widgets. Literally built all of this from scratch in the 8 hours.
Wow, that's impressive. It looks great.
Fantastic. So we have a little welcome calendar screen here with a hero image, and when we scroll down, I have a little teaser around the new portal. So what are the things you can do? You can locate your students, you can write reports, and you can also chat with the parent. So main features down here, we have 2 beautiful cards that are basically allowing us to view a list of Canberra students and also to view the incident reports that are related to Canberra students. So let's have a look at her students. And we can actually see the students that are assigned to her. That's all done through the sysuser.manager relationship. So very simple. We're using out-of-the-box data structure for this. It is obviously a custom app, but our table of incident reports is derived from the incident table. So we're literally using the ITSM incident management and built an so-called extension application for Safe Now. So one thing that we see here is that Addie Smith, that is the kid that I was logged in with on my mobile phone, right, has a little red bubble here, which is the incident report. But before that, as a teacher, now I want to know, where is Eddie actually right now? So that's the static latitude and longitude value that I was talking about. So instead of my home latitude and longitude, that's where I hard-coded for the demo pretty quick, the two other values, just for simplicity's sake. As you can see here, that would be close to the Tim Hortons right here. So now, as a teacher, if I want to know, well, how do I actually get there? Because who knows where she wandered off to, right? I can calculate the route pretty quick. This will call the actual Google Maps distance API. It's not a screenshot, really the Google Maps distance API. This is where the school is right now. So it uses the latitude and longitude from the school. In a proper scenario, obviously, we would probably using the mobile device of the teacher to determine where's the teacher, where's the kid, that is the distance and the route that we have to calculate, right? So Google Maps API, Google Maps distance API, and the route API. So 3 different APIs that we're using for this. And now we can basically go and find Eddie. So let's assume we found Eddie. Then as a teacher, I can open this from my mobile phone and tablet. So if I shrink this down, you can still see this is all working very nicely on mobile. Instead of the top navigation, I have a nice side menu now, right? So it's the power of Bootstrap. Material Kit is still Bootstrap in the end, right? And the first thing we want to do is say we found the student. So when we do this, then we get a little notification that says, thank you, student has been marked as found, which basically changes the state on the actual incident. And contextually, so dependent on the state, we now have a nice material form where we can now fill this out on our phone, tablet, or at home whenever you want. At least it's not dreaded paper, right? So now I can basically say, okay, where in the school was the student last seen? Playground. What was the student doing before? Playing with Tim and Tom. Where was the student found? Tim Hortons. Again, these Canadians. And then at what time was the student found? Let's just say 11:13 a.m. So what I wanted to do here is embed the material date and time picker. Didn't really get to do that in the 8 hours, but that would be in a future version that you don't type in the time, right? So just a few things that we want to improve for sure. And how can this be prevented? We need to teach her to eat less donuts. And close the incident. Once we've done that, we have a view of the data that we actually put into the system, right? So it's all written on the incident report now. And from here, I basically have 2 things that I can do now. So usually you would now basically send that incident report that you wrote on paper. You would send it out via snail mail, right? So you'd really have put a mail, you'd have to write a letter, put it into the mail, and send it to the teachers and the administration.
Right.
So completely automated this and said, okay, we know the parents because the parents are users in the system that are related to the child, right? So we can send it to their email addresses, and obviously same with the administration / council, whatever you want it to be, right? All right. So that basically concludes the demo. So we've shown how the coordinates get into the system. Maybe I'm just going to show pretty quick the backend here.
Yeah, that's what the admins and developers like looking at.
So you can see we created a new application. That's a scoped application, obviously, because we don't want to build applications in global. Today, everything should really be a scoped app, and made it super simple for us to also extract it from the Hackathon instance and bring it into our development instance. So really love the mechanism of the scoped applications. And as you can see, very simple applications with an incident table. Surprise. The incident table actually holds obviously the incident record. So you will see there's no similarities with the out-of-the-box incident form, though it's still extended from it, right? So we're getting features like the number, the state, the assigned to. So it's really great. That's something that we really love about ServiceNow is the ease of creating new tables and not having to recreate all those fields. So incident was the table in our use case. We debated if we should use the task table or the incident table, but then thought safety incident is, or save now incident is actually a proper description because that's exactly what it is. They even call it like that in the school, right? So why shouldn't we use the actual incident management application?
You want to use the language they're used to speaking. You don't want to say, oh, we're going to call this a request or Yeah, exactly.
And the beauty of this is we could remove all the IT-related fields, right? Nobody forces us to use the category field on that form here.
Right.
So obviously a few new fields here. The student that the incident is related to, the gender comes from the user form. Pardon me. The manager also comes from the user record. Home phone, that would usually be something now, pardon me, that she would have on her user record. Just realized I didn't fill this out in my demo instance, so pardon me, but usually when you have a phone number in there, you might have seen that there was also a little phone icon in the portal. So the teacher could have pressed that button, which would then automatically open up the phone application on your mobile, or if you're like, say, like me on a Mac right now, would have opened FaceTime and initiated an audio call.
Nice.
The related student tracking ticket, I'm going to talk about that in a second. This is a second table we created. From here now, we can basically say what was the staff who was involved in finding Addie, right? And here you can see all the closure data that we actually put in through the portal, right? So it's all nice in here on the forum. And we had our SLAs that are actually running. So it's an incident 2-minute alert. So we got this. And then on the student tracking table, you can see I have a bunch of check-ins here already. But if we look at the last one, which is the one that we had now during the demo. So if I look at that, it's basically just a record with a number, with a person that comes from the app record, and latitude and longitude values, right? And based on those latitude and longitude values, we have 2 business rules, which is validate coordinates and see if they are valid coordinates. Shocker. And we have a validate distance business rule. We go to advanced. We basically created a new script include that uses our REST message that I'm going to show in a second to actually get the distance between the origin, which is really the record on the student tracking table, as well, which is the school latitude and longitude. As you can see, you have a location that's allocated to the person, and then the latitude and longitude values from that location record are being considered the origin, and the destination is where you currently are, right? And then from there, we basically get the distance from our script include, and then basically look, okay, is there already an open incident for that kid right now? If not, then we're basically creating a new incident, which is exactly what this is, which then reflects back into the portal. Very simple, and maybe... so here's the Google Distance REST message that we created. So we got a default GET message right here. As you can see, we're using the Google Maps APIs, the distance matrix for this. And we have a few variable substitutions, obviously. And when you go into the HTTP request, you basically see, okay, maybe you're going to blur this one out in your recording. It's basically our API key, language, mode, destination, origin. So we pass in everything dynamically and get our result back from the Google API. And all of this is then obviously processed in a script include. And let's just see, it's here in the Google Maps Distance API. That's also nicely contained in our Servicenow application. And here you basically have our very simple get distance function that reaches out of the REST message, passes in everything manually, right? And then just parses the response. And very simple, we're just taking the distance value out of this. And then basically we have a property that basically says, that controls what the distance can be, right? So it's a system property that you can determine and say, okay, if you are 100 meters away from the school, then this is the trigger to actually say, yeah, create an incident. And that is the pure magic of the application. It's not super sophisticated. It was the first time I really used the material kit. So it was a really cool experience for us to see how quickly you can bring in custom themes into Service Portal. So leveraging the external CSS, JavaScript, which was great. So I worked on that. Stefan and Mike worked on the Google Maps part, whereas Cheyenne was working on the backend, the forms, the fields. So it was really a really great team effort. It was just amazing to see how we got this all together. Well, so definitely want to thank ServiceNow for the opportunity to participate in the hackathon. It's a great initiative. It was really interesting for me to be on the other side this time. So for the past 6 years, I've been working on the other side as a ServiceNow employee. So it was a ton of fun to be really a participant this year, and we had a fabulous team. I really loved how this all came together like shortly before the hackathon. You know what? It's great if you have everything in place before, but I think it's also part of the hackathon to just play it a little by ear and really just go with what you think you want to do and figure it out as you go. That's really part of the hackathon spirit to me. Of course, you can prep as much as you can and try to come up with a fully finished product, but I think the real fun is like working as a team and trying to figure this all out. One thing that I will tell you, though, is this thing started around 4 p.m. I think at around 7:30, 8-ish. We felt pretty safe and felt pretty good about ourselves that we had 80-90% done. Well, turns out we really didn't, because later at around 10:30, like half an hour before the deadline, we're like, oh, this is missing. Oh, how about this? How about this? So it was quite the scramble. So time management is really of the essence. Make sure you have, I almost feel like an agile approach of a little like Post-its or something where you have your stories on it or something in front of you can really help you a lot in keeping track of what it is that you really want to do. That's really essential to me, I would say. But overall, it was just a phenomenal experience. Lots of great apps that have been built. Really cool to see that there's so many apps that had literally nothing to do with the standard ServiceNow. And I'm going to call this out boring IT ticketing part. Right? This is where it comes from. Everybody's like, oh, IT ticketing. No, it's really not. Right? It's a platform that you can, I won't say unlimited, but in the transactional space, you have almost unlimited possibilities for building applications, that was just the proof, right? That we can do almost anything, and prototype it in 8 hours was just great for us to see that. We have never worked with Material Kit before from Google and thought, this looks really slick. How about we use that? And we figured it out as we went. We used all the different Google Maps APIs, which was really cool to see. And yeah, it was just fun to have, like, Cheyenne and Stefan are both not like deep coders, but with their respective skill sets, we still got to the goal, right? So it's like the platform allows basically every single skill set to contribute to those kind of applications, which is something that I really, really enjoy about the platform. You don't have to be a full stack developer to contribute. So it was a lot of fun. Thanks ServiceNow for arranging that. We're definitely coming back next year, see that we can do one place better than the second, and take this thing home to Canada.
Yeah, you stole my thunder, because I was going to close with, that your team really proved that you can take ServiceNow, often thought of as a business platform,
right,
and use it for child safety, or this was the social good category, and you really did a great job showing the scenarios that you can use these onboard capabilities. That was just amazing. So best of luck to you next year. I love the spread, the hoodie that you've got on.
There it is. Hackathon weather.
Got his CreatorCon wear. Not everybody wears one of those people. So thanks again, Frank, for participating in the hackathon and joining today. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with next year. As I said to another team, that the challenge is always, how do you outdo your best that you've done this year? So good luck to you next year. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chuck. You have a good day. Bye.
Welcome to Team Vocalize. You are one of the winners of the hackathon. Thank you very much for competing, and thank you for taking time out to share your wonderful accomplishment with us here today. I want to welcome Raul and Guillaume from 3C Logic. You were at Knowledge 18, competed in the hackathon, and took home that wonderful trophy I see on the screen there.
Right here. Right here.
Is it full of anything drinkable?
There used to be, there was champagne. We ran out.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can start with the whole spiel of what you built and how you built it, and we'll get into Q&A in a little bit. But I want to see this in person.
So, Chuck, thanks for having us. So, yes, we are Team Vocalize. We actually both represent our company, 3C Logic. And what we showed at Hackathon was how to integrate sentiment analysis into what is our space, which is essentially the communication space, but most commonly people associate contact centers, call centers, and so forth, and how to do that within the ServiceNow environment. So just a little bit of background first and foremost. So I represent sort of the sales and business development side, and then at the same time I've got Raul here with me, who's really the genius behind sort of what we revealed at Hackathon. And I should mention that as a result of the win, this is something that we anticipate actually making formally part of the 3C Logic solution, hopefully before the end of the year. We're already listed on the store. This would presumably be an add-on to what we already have listed there. So some excitement for sure. So to that end, a little bit about where we come from. Team Vocalize, again, is an extension of the 3C Logic group. We specialize in integrated communications for ServiceNow. And we've had a long-standing relationship with ServiceNow to the extent that we're not just a certified application, we're also a silver technology partner. So if we dive into exactly what we did and why we built it, so we provided or wanted to showcase the importance and the power of speech transcription, as well as AI machine learning and how it can be applied to sentiment analysis. The idea being, how can we offer or allow an institution or an organization or even a department within an enterprise company to gain visibility in what we define as dark data, which are the conversations that today are typically limited between the individuals that were participant in that conversation. So if you think customer service, it might be the customer calling in and the employee that's fielding the call. And then your visibility at a high level administratively is limited to, maybe the notes that the agent entered or perhaps did not, and any automated activities or data points that you would put back into ServiceNow. But being able to dive into exactly what happened objectively is still limited to those manual and human-driven tasks. The goal here was to provide an automated way to provide visibility into a conversation as close to real time as possible, and to the extent that necessary, drive automated tasks. Presumably, typically the use case is if a conversation goes sideways, so that the organization is aware that there might be a need for client advocacy. But then you could look at it the other way around, right? How can you also be aware of good engagements as they take place and use those for coaching purposes or examples to evangelize throughout the organization? So Raul and his team used a couple different components to make this possible. One was Amazon Web Services Transcribe, Lambda, and Comprehend tools. Obviously, we make use of our native integration with the 3C Logic platform into ServiceNow. And then, obviously, we make use of ServiceNow. So the business rules, the schedules, as well as scripted REST APIs are all things that together made this possible. So with that, we're going to switch gears here, and let me actually go into the demonstration. So the use case, the starting point is relatively straightforward. Step one is to leverage the 3C Logic application. So you can see here we have our CTI, which is computer telephony integration, which is leveraging ServiceNow OpenFrame. So in theory, a call comes in like it does right here. You have an active call, and you could have the equivalent of a screen pop, right? So this is just to give you an idea of how an engagement might actually get started. And then, of course, when an engagement is over, you presumably would have access to, call recordings or notes that took place that you can store in the phone log inside of ServiceNow.
Can I ask a real quick question and bump that font up a little bit? I assume we're going to have people watching on a mobile device, and it might be a little small.
There you go.
Better. Yeah, nice.
So you've got the CTI, you've got the call that came in, you have the screen pop, you have the activity posting that goes in. These are all functionalities that are available today. We want to take a step further and drive more visibility into those engagements. So if we look at it sort of starting with the end and working backwards, what we have here is an example of a dashboard. That dashboard is effectively giving you a ranking of the conversations that took place at a sentiment level. So how many calls were, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, how many were negative, how many were neutral, how many were positive. And in the right-hand side, you can actually look at it at an agent level. So if you want to drill down in terms of, which agents are having a good day or a bad day, and look at it at a individual level, you can do that, right? Now, if we actually drill down into the phone logs, you can see what we've done is we've incorporated in that column there what we call the sentiment. Sentiment right there gives you sort of a general ranking of what was negative, what was neutral, what was positive. In terms of the outgoing, incoming engagements that took place between your customer agents or perhaps your help desk agents and the end consumer. It could be an employee or it could be an end customer. If we drill down into one specifically, you can quickly see that you have a transcription of the conversation here at the bottom. And what we've done is we've taken that transcription, and when you apply what we call vocalize, and this is what we built for the hackathon, you can see a transcription of the engagement that took place between the customer and, in this case, the agent, which we're calling ADR, right?
I like how it's broken out by persona, because then you can tell if it was negative, who's contributing to the negativity of this.
That's right. Now, what we've done in this case is we've gone ahead and combined it, right, as one seamless conversation. But you can parse it out and say what was customer and what was agent, because you can see in this example, there are actually a couple of things that were highlighted. So iPhone, thank you. Either we ask the system to specifically target keywords. So, maybe in iPhone are they mentioning a competitor? Or in this case, if it was, in the form of tech support. Are the issues typically iPhone related or PC related, as another example, right? And thank you here is a positive attribution in terms of the quality of the conversation. So if we flip the script here and we go into sentiments, so if we go to view sentiments here real quick, you can see how it then takes that information and actually gives it an arbitrary ranking in terms of percentage breakdown. So as a whole, what percentage of the call was positive, negative, mixed, or neutral? We can get into it towards the end, but Amazon Comprehend over time is going to learn. So one call is not sufficient enough to drive data, but 1,000 might be. How to then become more effective in terms of what is the definition of a positive, neutral, or negative call. So over time, the accuracy of those conversations, or at least the objective rating that's given, becomes increasingly more correct. Now, what you do is then when you go into reviews, you can see that we then took it a step further and said, okay, look, in this case, we want to drive automated tasks inside of ServiceNow based on the outcome of the call. In this case, our focus is anything that's marked as critical. Critical is the definition of anything that was negative. Negative being driven by the ranking or sentiment analysis that was given. And what we've done in this case is just forward this task or set of tasks to the supervisor that may be representing that agent or group of agents. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, you could flip this and say, look, I also want to drive activities for positive engagements. Maybe it's for recognizing those that are performing well, or maybe using those as examples to uplift the overall customer quality that the department as a whole is otherwise executing. And that in a nutshell is what we've been able to build. Again, we did this in the course of a hackathon. The goal is to take a lot of these components and apply them in a more commercialized manner, which is what we're going to be looking to do and make available on the store, ideally before year end.
So my first question is, how tunable is this, or is that something you're looking to do when you make it commercial grade? Can you adjust the threshold to say that negative is 60% negative or 40% negative, or as it learns and it grows, your metrics may change a little bit over time. Are there parameters you can dial in?
Right. So what we are leveraging here is ServiceNow's workflow and business rules. So you can set all your custom rules saying that if the threshold of the call reaches this much percentage in the negative or the positive scenario, then do this activity. So all those things are configurable and manageable by the administrator or the supervisor of that project.
All right. I want to see how it's built behind the scenes.
Right. So as Guillaume mentioned, that there are two basic blocks of the system. One is a customer, which shows in this diagram shows the different sentiments that they have. And then you have your customer representative sitting behind your telephone and trying to field all the calls by the customers. So what ServiceNow and a combination of this logic does here is that it gathers the data of the recordings, and then step-by-step execution is done using a transcription service that can be on AWS, or you can switch it to Google or Azure. And so it's a step-by-step process where you convert your recording media into a transcription and then do a sentiment analysis over your transcription which you made. Then that sentiment analysis can drive workflows within your CRM. In this case happens to be ServiceNow, and then you can say, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. Basically, you're trying to convert a recording or a sentiment of a customer into an actionable item. And then actionable item can be now assigned to somebody to perform a task. Like if somebody made a negative call or it's a negative representation of the call, then a customer advocate can be assigned a task to go back or reach back to the customer and give him some goodies, right? I mean, just lure the customer and bring him back or something like that. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're trying to achieve here. So this diagram shows that the blue box in between is the actual module that we built up, and it's all plug and playable thing that you can switch between your services. You can choose different set of services, but this is essentially what we're trying to do, like step by step converting our recording into a transcription and then doing sentiment analysis. How we leverage ServiceNow is the third block on the down bottom. You see workflows. So we wrote our own business rules and workflows that can trigger the task. And we also use those scripted REST APIs or schedulers to reach out to our Lambda functions or our Google functions to perform these tasks.
I think the important thing here, Chuck, to mention is that the one of the things that this ultimately drives is awareness. Client advocacy is typically measured in speed to response, right?
Right.
So most people are going to get frustrated in that, I am frustrated. And then at some point, they would hope that someone would recognize that frustration. The time or the delta between when that may, and in some cases it never does, gets recognized. If it's been 3 or 4 days, by then they may have already switched to a different provider. I mean, you see industries. But if you're able to be proactive within, let's say, 30 minutes or less, whatever that magic threshold is, you actually have the opportunity to take what was otherwise potentially a very damaging, bad experience and completely turn it in your favor. Customer service now is more a case of how you react when things go wrong, rather than a case of how do you react when things are going smoothly.
Right.
And clients are going to judge you on how you do during those instances where you are at risk as an organization, as a provider. I can think of for me, insurance, my car insurance. It's how do they do when I need to use the insurance? My car's broken down. How quickly did they respond? What was the experience, et cetera, et cetera? In which case, if someone comes to me and, it was a good experience and the competitor says, hey, I'll save you $300. I may say, you know what, for $300, it's not worth to me the risk.
Yeah.
When I know that the quality of service when I need it is there. This is ideally meant to fall or to service along those same guidelines. It's speed to response.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I assume that you said these services are interchangeable. Do we need to subscribe to a transcribed service? Is there an additional account and cost for that, as the sentiment analysis is as well?
That's correct. So within our REST script APIs, you can plug in your API keys that is essentially used to call the services. So once you have the correct keys, then you can use it. Some
system properties, I assume, to set the URL and a couple of client IDs or something. Okay, good.
And then you can have your custom adapters, which can switch you between different cloud providers.
Anything else, gentlemen?
No, we're excited. I mean, this is an example of things that we're doing to complement what ServiceNow does as a platform across the different industries that it has. For those that are watching, stay tuned. We've had additional and more exciting things to come in addition to this. But as far as Hackathon goes, we'll be there next year with the goal to defend the trophy here to our left. So come to play because we'll be doing the same.
So Guillaume, I think you summed it up really well. If I'm having a bad day and I call customer service for something and I happen to be a cranky customer, imagine the scenario where as soon as I hang up, within a few minutes, because there's no reason this has to kick around, a secondary agent or a supervisor or somebody's calling me back and going, hey, Chuck, looks like that call really didn't go your way. It could have been anything that set me off that day, from personal to professional to the engagement itself. But to have that experience is just a big wow. Nobody that I can think of does this. And I'm really excited to see this in the marketplace and getting it on the marketplace. So best of luck to you. I hope people adopt it as quick as possible. And like you said, I want to see what you come up with next year for the hackathon, because it's always, when you're on top, it's always hard to top that with another idea to execute.
There's only one way that's down, but we'll do our best to prevent that from happening. But look, we appreciate the time, Chuck. And our goal again is to have this out sooner rather than later. I mean, we were having some fun, but the demand and the feedback was enough that it was hard to ignore. So we'll be working on it, and we'll let you know when it's officially out.
Good job. Good talking to you today, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
All the best.
All right. And for our third and final team, it is my pleasure to welcome Team Scrantonicity from Pathways. We've got almost the entire team with us here today, where they're going to be showing us their social good category application, NeutraNow. Did I get that right, gentlemen?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Then I'm going to turn it over to you to give the introduction of what this does, how you built it, all the cool stuff. Have fun.
Well, we'll start. I'm Ken from Pathways Consulting Group in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
I'm Sean Teeple. So before we go through the rest, our team name is Team Scrantonicity. So I don't know how many of you watch The Office, but that's where we got the name from. We're originally based out of Scranton. It's right down the road.
My name is Jeremy Messias, also a Pathway developer.
And I'm Brandon Sinise, just like everybody else, Pathways developer. So this is the app that this is the service portal app that we built. This is NutriNow. So the ultimate goal of NutriNow was to design a way or to help your employees or people that you work with and encourage them to get active. I mean, as you know, a lot of us are sitting around computers all day. We're not really getting outside. We're not really paying attention to that aspect of our lives. So this is kind of a way to not only encourage you to, be a little bit more active, but give you an incentive to do so. This is the main landing page right here. As you'll see, there's a couple of main pieces, such as everything's tracked around your profile, more or less. And then there's a way to track what you're taking in, calories, and then what you're letting go of in regards to exercise overview. So to start from the beginning, let's go through setting up a profile. So here you'll see that we have a profile for Dwight. Everything that you do regarding exercises and taking in calories is, of course, based around a couple of key components about you that we would need to know in order to calculate that. So, for example, you'll see here, we've got your height, your current weight, but using that information, we calculate your BMI and what we think is a target daily calories for that. Of course, there are other pieces that factor into that as well. But you might say, well, everybody has a different goal, though, right? What if I don't think this is my target calories? Well, that's where the caloric needs piece comes into play. You'll see that there's a recommended activity level, and this is kind of it uses this as a starting point. So right now, it's what's your current activity level? What do you do? And then furthermore, remember that a lot of this is assuming that your goal is to lose weight. That might not be your goal. Maybe you want to maintain the current weight that you have, or maybe you need to gain weight. All of this information is used to help calculate your target daily calories and keep you on the right path. Now going to the caloric overview. So all that's well and good, of course, but it doesn't actually do anything or mean anything until you start keeping track of what you're eating and what you're taking in.
Absolutely.
So, right. So the first start here is to take that data and start making sense of it. So you'll see here that you can see how much calories that you're spending per week, per day, and you can more or less take a look at whether you're on track or not. Of course, there's also the higher level overview of monthly, where you can say, all right, well, how am I doing in July versus June? Good idea to keep you on track and make sure that your eye's on the prize, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a way, of course, to track this, and you have to add a meal. So there's a couple of interesting ways in which you can do this. So take, for example, that you're eating something that's packaged. Maybe it's a box of cereal. Maybe it's a soda. Well, considering the goal, you'd probably hope it wasn't a soda, but maybe it is. One of the ways that you can take advantage of this is by scanning the barcode of that item.
Yeah, that's a great way to make the whole input of this so much more seamless.
Right, and that's the goal, because I don't think I think that many people probably find this piece to be tedious. Mm-hmm. But this kind of takes a little bit of that grunt work out of it and makes it a little bit easier to use. So actually, Ken is going to scan a barcode and show you how this works and what sort of information that this pulls in.
So using
on the right side, we're seeing your mobile, an image of your mobile device, right?
Correct.
Yes, that's over here.
So using the barcode scanner, we actually have it set. So what it's doing is, as you select scan a barcode, it'll pull up the application here. We're actually going to pull up the one. Okay, so correct. You can see how it pulled that in. And what it does is it actually reaches out to a free online open API, and it pulls back the information directly from the website. It's
U.S. Open Food Facts.
Okay, so that's an open API that basically is maintained by them, and you can just scan the barcode, it'll pull back whatever information is there for it. Sometimes, I mean, most of them have the caloric intake, the nutrition facts. Some of them actually show in images, as this one does. You can select what your portion size is. So in this case, we'll say 1 full portion. And you can see it was 90 calories per serving. We're doing the whole portion, so it actually added 90 calories. And when you click submit, what it'll do is it'll actually add that 90 calories into today's current, well, for today, you can see it's for Thursday.
Yeah.
So it'll add that right into there. So go back to Brandon.
Yep. So that's part of the magic right there, is just making that a lot easier. Of course, the whole goal being to burn off the calories, you have to control, or rather record, the exercise that you're taking as well. So similar setup here. You're going to see weekly the amount of exercise that you're doing. And of course, all of these types of exercises are going to burn different amounts of calories depending on the amount of time that you do it. And then there's also monthly, keeping track of how often that you're doing this per month. So it's very useful for keeping track of what you're doing with all that energy as well. So we're going to try to add a workout, and I'm going to show you how that works. So the way that it's handled is through exercise types. So interesting thing about exercise types and exercises, of course, is that it's all based off of an assumption for how long or how many calories that you burn doing a certain activity for a certain amount of time. That information was pulled. Do we have the source on that?
It was from a Harvard study we found on their website, which basically tracked how many calories were burned per half hour of activity. So we translated it about down to how many calories were burned per minute, and loaded it into this this table.
Nice.
Right. So without an assumption like that, it would be hard to take anything meaningful from this information. So we use that Harvard study as the basis. So say, for example, that you had done something, let's say you were bowling. Let's say you were doing it calculated in minutes, 15 minutes, we're going to say. You're going to notice that that information is actually tracked. So here we go. We're going to notice that bowling was added to our weekly exercise here. We're going to see the amount of time that we did it and the amount of calories that burned for us. And then if you're thinking big picture, of course, if it were significant enough to matter, it would be down here in the monthly exercise. But seems that it's not significant enough to show up in comparison to the rest of these exercise activities. So in a nutshell, too, that is also that's tracking your workouts in Nutrinow. Another thing, as you might imagine, is, well, great, I'm keeping in track with my goal, but my weight is no longer 180 pounds. It's 170 pounds now a month later. Well, of course, that's great, and that's what you use this weight update for, is that you can declare a new weight so that more accurate measurements can be derived from your updated weight. So if you're 170 pounds now, your BMI is going to change, of course.
Are you using this app in your Biggest Loser competition?
Yeah, we're using this in combination with a couple other things because we didn't get to incorporate all the stuff in Hackathon that we would have. So as far as like tracking steps go and everything, but we're planning on sort of shaping this out to include all of that. I mean, we have a lot of it designed, and eventually using just this. And this is basically would be the light version of what we would need for that.
So, all right, so what were some of the components that went into building this? I obviously see Service Portal, right?
Yeah, of course. Service Portal, a couple of custom, there's a custom REST call, of course, that's working with Open Food Facts to pull in that information.
Yeah.
There's, other than, we have a couple of custom tables. We have our custom Angular widgets, of course, too. I will get to in a moment so that we can take a little bit of a look at them. But as for all of that, it's just the Service Portal tying everything that we built together more or less and presenting it in a good way.
And the mobile app to allow the barcode scanning.
Sure, that's a huge help right there.
Absolutely.
Right. So something else too. I mean, as you might already know, you have the ability to add attachments on the Servicenow forms.
Right.
We left this in here too as a way so that if you wanted something more substantial to prove that you've lost the weight, you could use that as a simple benchmark and attach it here.
I was going to say that. I noticed you could add attachments while you were declaring your weight, and I thought, I've seen people do this. It's kind of this before and after. I used to have, this big pot belly out in front of me, and 4 weeks later, I can say, "Look, I'm got a 6-pack."
Right.
Right. It is a little bit more open ended like that too. Depends on how you want to define that, how you think that attachment might be important, or all of this is of course sufficient in tracking your exercise, but there's a little bit more to it too. So you might remember that Sean just mentioned that we're doing a Biggest Loser competition here at the office.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings an aspect of competition to losing weight and staying healthy. So in the similar fashion, you could actually keep track of that in NutriNow. If you want to see how you're doing in reference to everybody else, you could keep an eye on it and say, well, I'm losing this much percentage in comparison to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it goes by percentage because there's so many factors to consider, like your height, your weight for your age, for example. So the way that it's calculated is through percentage, but it does bring a fun aspect of competition so that you can see how you're doing compared to your peers.
Michael's going the wrong direction.
Yeah, he had a tough week. He had to make a decision on who to let go, and it really sent him on a spiral.
One other thing I wanted to go back into, actually, there's two things I wanted to talk about. One is health news down here that you might notice. So this kind of gives people another reason to come back and check NutriNow's homepage every day, we would hope, so that you can see that maybe there's something new to keep track of, or whether there's some new tips to help you maintain your lifestyle that you're going for. Just something to show activity and keep people excited about what they're doing. And the other piece that I wanted to take note of here is this is where the custom Angular widget part comes into play. So one of the reasons that we decided to do this and not use an out-of-the-box widget is because we're trying to match the aesthetic that we had going on in the service portal. Mm-hmm. And the out-of-the-box widgets, they didn't really feel right, I guess you could say, with what we have as a theme currently. So it was more of a web design choice, I guess you could say, than anything else. We like the aesthetic of these a little bit better, and we wanted to also keep the information it displays very simple. You'll notice that there's not really a whole lot of information to digest here. We're hoping that if you wanted something more detailed, you'd go to the calorie overview or the exercise overview.
Right.
This should be at a glance.
Yep. That's what belongs on a homepage is how am I doing overall?
I think it also shows off a lot of the features that ServiceNow offers. I mean, with the, where you can create the custom, widgets, and then, the Angular, pulling everything in.
Mobile, the flexibility of the portal, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, good point. With something I learned that you may want to consider if you participate again next year is you only need to write as much as you want to show.
That's right. Yeah.
It could be the world's greatest application. And because I've done that before, is gotten overloaded with, here's a great idea, and let's do that and throw this in. But you know what? If it's not in the demo, nobody's going to care.
Right.
Yeah, we realized that, and next second time around, we're definitely going to keep that.
I think being that we were all developers, that probably was part of it. Wanted to make sure everything was complete.
I do the same thing. It happens, and then somebody says, no, Chuck, back off. It's nice to have that, but no one's going to see it. Like, you got a point. I'm not going to write it. You could have 5 UI actions on a form, and only one of them has to work if that's all you're going to click.
Yep, you definitely understand that issue then.
But it's easy to get into that trap. Oh, we should have a report that does this and a gauge that says that. And like, wait, that's a whole nother branch of this application that I'm not going to have time to write.
Yep, of course.
Gentlemen, I am truly impressed with what you built in just those few short 8 hours. It was very impressive. I'm going to call you guys when I need a new service portal. That's where I often fall down. I can architect the application to death, but service portal for some is you make it look easy, and I'm glad it looks that way. What I see is that you've taken a lot of the core components of the platform and show how they can not only be good for the individual employee for a healthier lifestyle, of course, but also good for the organization with positive morale, a bit of team building through that competition, And, like you mentioned, let's not forget the almighty dollar, lowering insurance costs. And with that, I'm truly impressed. Thank you for joining us here today, and wish you all the best in next year's hackathon. You will be competing next year, right?
Oh yeah, we're planning on
We'll be
it.
back.
It was our first one, but we had a great time.
The hardest thing, I mentioned this to the others, the hardest thing to do is top what you've already done. If you're a prize winner, it's hard to reclaim that title, but I have no doubt you'll come up with something stellar.
Yeah, we got 2 spots to go up. So.
Yep, there's always room for improvement. There's nothing wrong with that. Thanks for joining again today. And if you, dear viewer, are interested in joining the hackathon, we will be doing this again at Knowledge 19 in Las Vegas next May. Go to knowledge.servicenow.com. If you feel you need to bone up on a few skills, definitely go to developer.servicenow.com, where you can get free learning plans, get a personal developer instance. If you make some mistakes, you can wipe it and start over. It's a wonderful thing. We'll have London on there and later in Q3 of 2018, so you can use the latest release of software. It's a good time. I also encourage you to ask questions in the community or go over to the SN Dev Slack channel and ask questions there. Lots of people there who are willing to help you gain those skills so that you can be a prize winner, just like the people we've talked to today. So thank you very much again for joining us, and I wish you all the best. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.